Very good morning to all of you and very warm welcome. Uh, I'd like to begin thanking Rohit and team to making this off-highway conference happen. I know it's a tough job to do and you guys are doing a commendable job. Congratulations on the same. Uh, you know, uh, I'd like to present our thoughts on Indian off-highway industry, but before I do that, let me introduce our company for those who are not aware of. Anyway, so Power Systems Research since 1976 has focused on data intelligence and information revolving around engine and engine-driven applications, offering production, sales, forecasts, population data, which helps many of our OEMs and tier one suppliers with better product, market, and growth planning activities. It's with presence across the globe, including North America, Europe, Japan, and emerging regions like Brazil, India, and China. We have been able to offer powerful global and local perspectives with a couple of products and services that we have currently, which encompasses from database services, which helps you map, track, a couple of applications which are engine and alternate power driven on ongoing basis across the globe. Beyond that, we also offer a couple of custom services which help you identify an addressable market, which is a very important aspect of decision making. And more importantly, with our background and understanding of the industry over the last 40 years, it allows us a fair bit of understanding where the technology is evolving going forward. For last couple of years, we have been supporting many of our OEMs and tier ones, help enter a couple of new markets, develop their product and market strategy, and scenario planning in such an VUCA world. So that's been possible with, our coverage that I would say which differentiates us substantially is that we have some unique products that we have developed jointly with our associations with a lot of engine and OEM and tier one suppliers, which include current coverage of almost 4,500 plus OEMs, 500 plus engine manufacturers across 90 applications. Now, this insights helps us provide some unique solutions as a dashboard for a company which has multiple products, multiple country presence. It gives you a good dashboard for the management to review how the trends look like, what's coming in new, what's going out, and that's where we have been busy all these 40 years supporting couple of and beyond our OEM and engine coverage, we also have developed a couple of niche areas on the component which encompass from transmissions data, filters data. We have a couple of things on axles and FIE, which is most talked about with the new upcoming emission norms. So these are some of the areas, but not limited to. We jointly develop with our customers on the areas of their focus. So that's some of our strengths. We have survived some economic cycles, and our customers, whom have been around, find us as their partner because of our experience, global perspectives, the breadth of our coverage, and more importantly, we have an online access which allows you to download exactly focus areas for your product and business planning. So that was a bit of us, and as we move forward to the subject of today, which is giving you a little bit perspective of how we feel the Indian off-highway industry is likely to shape up going forward. But before that, let us take a step back and see how we fare in terms of global off-highway equipment production. And it's very interesting as we see. It's just a quick comparison of how the global off-highway road equipment production has fared 18 over 19, we would see that almost most of the regions have seen flat or negative growth, and that speaks a lot about the global economy and where we are moving. And India is not too different, but we had a phenomenal 18. 19 was down for most of the regions, but if you see, thanks to the tractor production, we are the world's largest off-road equipment production as a country, and we contribute to almost 25% of the 3.5 million off-road equipments that are produced. When I say off-roads, I'm limiting myself to ag and construction equipments in this discussion. And that's about, if we look at the production, this is how we fare. When we look at a market perspective, how do we fare in terms of a global market attractiveness? I know many of you are global players, and there are challenges. However, within those challenges, if I see, we are still the fourth largest market in terms of construction equipment. And if I see how we are spread over the growth for the next 5 years, it looks really promising in terms of the volume versus the CAGR growth rate that we envisage going forward. And I say that with confidence here right now because with the large-scale infrastructure projects that have been announced, some of them are in implementation stage, some of them in concept stage. Having said that, Sagarmala, Bharatmala, and Jalmarg all put together can drive the show for next couple of years. And government's corrective measures to revive the economy, support the infrastructure-driven growth. I think so. All these factors, coupled with underdeveloped, penetrated infrastructure that we have currently, there is little but enough, headroom for the growth going forward. So. I wouldn't be surprised if we are somewhere in the zone of Japan and US in next decade or so in terms of growth in the construction equipment. Interestingly, when we switch it over to the ag, we are the world's largest producer and market as well. And for a foreseeable future, we will likely to be remaining the largest market. Despite a phenomenal growth in tractor production and some specialized equipments over the last couple of 6-7 years, we still see under-penetration in terms of mechanization per 1,000 hectares compared to the area of available for cultivation. So that and coupled with a couple of these government initiatives on doubling the farmer income. So for a foreseeable future, again, when I say next 5 years, at least we are seeing a very attractive growth. Compared to construction equipment, we'll see a moderate growth in tractor industry. But this is how I just wanted to give you a brief about how we fare in the global terms when you look at off-road equipment industry. Now, there are a couple of growth drivers, as you are aware. I'll not rule over all of those. You have come from the industry background. I'm sure you understand half or most of it. But some of the points that I'd like to highlight is most of the construction equipment growth in India is driven by government. As such, they play a very, very important role on how the infrastructure equipment industry really shapes up going forward. With whatever targets we have set, for various projects that are under development, implementation, or at a completion stage, I would say even if you take at the road or the highway sector, we are currently at 25 to 30 on an average kilometer per day kind of a completion. If you have to reach to the target specified, I would assume that we'll have to grow at double the rate in terms of completion to meet those targets. So that itself speaks a lot of growth. In terms of roads and highways. I also see for next 4 or 5 years, they'll play a prominent role. Roads and highways are followed by improvisation, modernization for urban transportation driven by metros, railways, and multimodal transportation that has been focused. So I see a lot of containerization happening. And hence, the ports will be a major focus for activity. We haven't seen much of real estate improvisation for last 4 or 5 years. It will be a while before we see an oversupply situation to come down to a realistic level. But having said that, statistics play a very important role. We are still looking at 5 billion kind of an investment every year that goes into real estate investment. That means we need substantial equipments revolve around construction equipment also. Uh, Obviously, government's playing its role by, increase infrastructure spends. Most importantly, they have relaxed the norms on the FDI front on a couple of sectors. They have opened up mining with 100% FDI on coal segment to reduce the import dependency in India. So that allows or facilitates, while it's also the major buyer, it's also facilitating areas where it can attract private investments, and that's an important aspect when you look at growth driver. If you look at about agricultural equipments, I would say last 15 years have been phenomenal growth in terms of tractor. We are looking at kind of 400,000 units produced a couple of years ago, and now we are almost touching a million, just short of million in tractor production. And despite that, I see there is enough room for growth. With our estimates are there are only 40 tractors per 1,000 hectares, kind of an penetration compared to the global average, which is double. So when we are looking at labor shortages, labor availability, labor skills, movement from rural to urban, and contract farming, all of these are supporting the mechanization going forward. And the past growth rates have been a result of all these drivers. One of the areas that we haven't seen much in India is an equipment rental facility, specifically for the small and marginal farmers. Yeah, I mean, we are kind of a 75-80% agricultural focused economy with marginal farmers driving the show. So unless we get them into the system of mechanization in the way of collaborative farming or contract farming, it's a growth waiting to happen. So I'm seeing some positive steps taken off by a couple of OEMs in India to tap this market, and that's a welcome change. And obviously with direct benefit transfers, MSPs, doubling farmer incomes, it's all in facilitation for the farmer to mechanize the way they do their farming. And these are some of those growth drivers we see. Obviously, as we work in an industry, challenges do exist. A couple of them that we feel are top 5-6 challenges is that unless we have private participation in the projects, specifically on the infrastructure, we are still missing on that 35% of the demand, which is non-government demand in infrastructure. Yeah, I would probably, as we open up through the day, I'd like to understand the industry's participation on, training our manpower for the next level of technology that we envisage in our products, and specifically the emissions coming in. So how are we going to really address the challenge of skilled operators for construction equipment and ag equipments? Financing has always been challenge, and with emerging countries, it's no surprise that it appears there. But I think so there has been enough effort made to ease out the equipment financing. Although we had a NBFC crisis, and I'd not like to elaborate more. It's been talked about, dusted about a lot. But more importantly, the concerns from the industry, what we see is project announcements are happening, order books look good. But I think so there has been a time lag between ordering and execution, and that's an area that needs to be addressed for this dream of 5 trillion to really happen in the stipulated time. Some of the contractors have also been complaining and delay on the payments. So all of these kind of sentiments that need to be addressed, some of them are. If I look at a global comparison in terms of the way we do business in construction equipment and ag, we haven't seen much of a used equipment market here compared to Middle East or any other. The acceptance levels of used equipments is very high, and we are not having much of a rental equipment options in India. When I say not much options, having the right equipment, right place, right time is the critical aspect of rental business. So that's an area that we need to really work on as an industry. Um, Not only this, but almost all of the conferences that we've been participating, we are almost talking about alternative fuels and powertrains that are going to impact across the value chain and the transportation segment, or even the off-road. So whether electrification is a reality in some parts and concept stage, we have seen some success, specifically in the mining segment, yes. Uh, the challenges or the nuances when I restrict myself to off-road equipment industry in terms of alternative powertrains a little different, because here we are looking at addressing uh, varied applications, some specialized equipments. When you look at from industry perspective, you're looking at low volume, so achieving that threshold or optimization and high cost of engineering, procurement of components for that. I think so these challenges are on-ground challenges that we have observed globally also. And the end-use applications, so taking care of those, vibrations, protecting it against, corrosions. They operate in a very harsh conditions compared to on-road transportation. So that's an area that is of concern. But I'm sure there are some successes globally which we could replicate here, and the beginning point can be the mining segment, undergrounding mining segment, going forward. Uh, uh, if you look at the top 6, 7 trends, I believe the largest trend that has changed the industry or impacted it is all the internet, interconnected, IoTs and AI. So I think so single largest impact has been by digital influx that we have seen in our machines, and beyond the machines we are also seeing some connected sites, and that's changing the way, it's a huge change from where the way we have been operating our machines and the sites. It's improved our productivity. Customers have become more informed. They have more sophisticated ways of evaluating the equipments, the right equipments, and that's a welcome change. So we also, in India specifically, we are typically a versatile machine-focused kind of a market, but the increase in specialized equipment is a sign that we are looking at more productive machines, specialized machines going forward. And that's coming at par with what the global practices have been. So we are just reaching there as a threshold. But for a foreseeable future, we will be multi-application equipment and specialized for niche applications. That's an area that's available for growth. Interestingly, many of those customers, thanks to this increase in the project size, faster implementation, bonuses from the end users, has driven our focus from initial cost to the TCO, which is driving the show now. So, and that's going to be an important purchase criteria for many buyers going forward. I'd like to elaborate a little more on the emissions which impact us this year and going forward. So I have a separate consideration for off-road equipment impact of emissions. With emissions, we move into an era of electronic engines from mechanical. Now that's a huge step forward, especially for a country like India, which hasn't seen an emission change for almost a decade, I would say. If I look at the impact, it really revolves around 50 HP plus a focus for now in CEV4, and most of the construction equipments are definitely more than 50 HP plus. So that's the segment that's likely to get impacted the most. In terms of volume contribution, backhoes, excavators, mobile cranes, right, all the wheeled applications. Tracked, there is an ambiguity around revolving around the tracked equipment. There's a draft notification, but there's no clarity, but we would anticipate that they should be a part of emissionized equipments as such, because we understand that although backhoe may account for majority of the sales in India, in terms of emissions, because of the power range of excavators, they play an important role when it comes to emissions. So although we are looking at quarter of volumes from excavators, they account for almost 50% of the emissions that come out of the off-road equipment. So at some point, it's an important consideration to bring them under the purview of emissions. So interestingly, when you look at an ag, we are less than a 50 HP market, right? So, until 2024, we do not see much of an impact, because even if we have 15-20% of those above 50 HP, those are largely export-focused equipments. So, will we really see transition of those into CEV4 or not? That's a debate. But I think so. It will be more of a challenge for us to see how we are able to transition, not from technology perspective, but from serviceability and maintenance perspective, as specifically where the equipments are in the remotest of locations. And currently with the mechanical engines, we could have those resolved in any mom-pop shows, or even the operators themselves are skilled enough to operate that or get that maintenance done. With electronic engines, I think so that's an area that it's just like to understand from all the industry participants how we tend to address serviceability, maintenance in an electronic engine era. So that's our a couple of my thoughts on emissions, but we'll be happy to elaborate more on this. We have a session coming over on that. Well, numbers, all of you from the industry, so these numbers are not too different. We have had a fantastic run for last couple of years, from 15 to 18. And if you were happy with numbers on 18, let me tell you, 2019 was a temporary dip, but we do see 2020 as a bounce back and coming back to the levels of 2018 when it look at construction equipment. For construction equipment, we see a sustainable requirement of 100,000 around equipments going forward for next couple of years. So that's almost doubling. If you see in a decade, we were around about 40,000 kind of equipment, 45,000. Now we are looking at more than doubling that threshold, which is a good sign. So we are increasing the base here. We're increasing the productivity, and more mechanized activities happening. As far as ag is concerned, we have had a phenomenal run in terms of improving mechanization per hectare in last 6-7 years, I would say. We haven't seen this numbers 7 years ago. So although again we are a monsoon driven or subsidy driven kind of an activity, but increasing applications in haulage are likely to drive increasing focus on exports for tractor are likely to drive this market. And we see we'll be somewhere around million tractor market in next 4 years. So that's our broad thought on the where the volumes look like. In sum, I feel across off-road equipment, we should see a sustainable growth for at least next 5-6 years. I wouldn't comment on the 2024, which is also an election year and emission change year for tractors. We'll have to wait and watch cautiously how it shapes up. But fundamentals remain the same. I would say underdeveloped, underpenetrated infrastructure and agricultural mechanization, focus of government on infrastructure and farm sector speaks a lot for itself. This will be an era of digital influx, so we should expect more of smart machines, productive precision machines, more of interconnected machines. Going forward, pollution is center stage not only in off-road but on-road also. So we have to be prepared to have a sustainable growth while not hampering our environment and human lives. So emissions will get stricter as we move forward. TCO reduction will be the focus for all, and that may be a key differentiation point for most of those OEMs, what we feel. We also see some trend shifting towards equipment leasing, rentals, and used equipment. There's a more acceptance that is coming around in that area. Primarily, we are an outright buying equipment buying kind of a country. So as we mature to a certain level, I feel that business ratio is likely to shift. Uh, well, we feel that it's more going to be an hybridization of the equipments, and we could see a gradual introduction of electrification, starting with some of, undergrounding mining equipment, some dump trucks, some small mining excavators, compact, like in 3 tons, where we will see an inflection point of the cost versus benefit ratio. So more importantly, we are seeing a lot of rise of informed customers. They are well traveled, they understand the impact of using the right equipments, and that also eases out your job to sell. But it also it puts an impetus on you to provide most productive machines and service to the industry. And that's our piece of thoughts for this industry. I'll be happy to take any more questions as we expand the day, but that's our keynote presentation for you. Thank you.